Thank you and happy Sabbath, everybody. What I'm going to be speaking about today it's about a word we don't often speak about, but I've been thinking about this word for quite some time now, and I thought I'd give a sermonette on it. And most sin has this word as a component of it in some fashion or form. And it does have a negative connotation in most applications. Some it doesn't, but in most it does. The word I'm thinking about is compromise. The noun for compromise, the meaning is settling the difference by arbitration or by consent reached by mutual concessions, or a concession or something derogatory or prejudicial. And then when it's used as a transitive verb, this is where most times in the Bible it has a negative connotation. To reveal or expose to an unauthorized person, especially to an enemy, confidential information was compromised. Or to cause the impairment of, to expose to suspicion, discredit, or mischief. So we see, and we can all think about places in the Bible where we know people have compromised in a negative fashion, and we see the results of that compromise in its many forms in the negative verb. There's several stories in the Bible, but I'm going to pick a couple that one is very significant, I think, and it has to do with Saul and the Israelites. This is when Saul was king. They were going to be going to war with the Philistines, and Samuel told him to wait for him before he gave the sacrifice. And as the seventh day went by, Saul was getting agitated, the people were scattering around, and he was becoming a little bit worried about that, and he really lost faith. So what he did was he compromised and decided that he was going to go ahead and perform the sacrifice. And we know what happened in that instance. It cost him God taking his Holy Spirit from him. So it's a very, very strenuous situation for, I'm sure, the Israelites in that predicament. And it was strenuous for Saul to come down and see that what he had done. And in 1 Samuel we read, 1 Samuel 13, 5 through 11. I'm not going to read it all. You can go ahead. This is in the New King James Version. I'll read just a couple verses here. 1 Samuel 13, 5 through 11. Then the Philistines gathered together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots and 30,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. And they came up and encamped in Michmash, to the east of Ben Haven. This area is where the Gaza Strip is, and they were actually called Gazites. And like I said, this is from the Philistines. That's the name Palestine comes from that form of Philistines that the Romans gave them. And then it says, and as for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. Then he waited 7 days according to the time set by Samuel, but Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. So, like I stated earlier, he decided to take it upon himself. He probably thought he was doing something good. You know, he was waiting the 7 days. People are getting a little antsy. He's getting a little antsy. And really what he lacked, when you really take a deeper introspective, is he lacked the faith that, number one, Samuel would be there to take care of what he said he was going to do. But I think he was really fearing for himself when it comes down to it. He didn't have the faith. People were starting to scatter, and he through his unbelief, decided he was going to go ahead and give that sacrifice, which cost him God taking his Holy Spirit from him. And then the second person I was thinking about was Samson, how he compromised with Delilah. And what I find interesting about this story is he stood fast. He had that Nazirite vow. His hair was long. He knew where his power was coming from. And when Delilah kept bugging him, he stood firm, but then she got to his pride and she started, saying, well, you don't love me. If you really love me, you'd tell me where you get your power. And she gave him forms of flattery and he succumbed to it. We read in Judges 16, you can go ahead and read the whole story there. I won't go into it. I'll just read a couple verses here. Judges 16, 1 through 28. Now Samson went to Gaza and saw the harlot there. That was the first problem. Some translations showed this is a mistress, but so he's going to the harlot. Never should have been doing that. And he went into her. So they had relations. And then Samson, like I said, he kept putting it off. He didn't know this whole time that Delilah was actually a Philistine, and she was there. She didn't love him. She acted like she did, but her main goal was to find where Samson's power came from. And just the thought of knowing after he gave in and compromised, I couldn't even imagine having your eyes plucked out like he did. And what he went through, they basically made a spectacle out of him. Then I looked up, I thought, well, Delilah, what's Delilah's name? Because I always like looking at, every name has a meaning. And so I checked this out, and Delilah, the meaning for Delilah is delicate. Delilah is a feminine name of Hebrew origin that translates to delicate or she who weakened. So she did, in fact, do her job. She weakened him, found out where strength came from. And we know the story. His hair grew back, and God granted him the one final wish. He did get to, seek revenge in a sense in that respect. But it cost him his life in the end. He compromised, and it never should have happened. He shouldn't have been going to the prostitute's house. He shouldn't have compromised. He should have stood firm. What we have to learn and we have to remember in all these stories is we're not above compromise. In today's world, there's compromise everywhere. There's compromise, the lie for the truth. We see it every day. The lie is the truth nowadays. There's no such thing as capital T truth. And I was thinking about compromise too. I have my little cell phone going on, and I watch these short reels, and I'll get into these little short reels, and I'm compromising my time. I should be praying or Bible studying. I'm watching these short reels one after another, the 15-second clips, and it's just, it's like our little hamster. Carmen and I have a little hamster that goes on this wheel. I don't know why, but these hamsters just love spinning on these wheels, and we can come to that, but the day and age that we're living in, it's not going to get any better. We know where we are in the prophetic timeline, and we really have to be on our guard. And Christ says before he comes down, will he find faith on the earth? That's sort of shocking for him to think that. It's like, well, of course you will, but in actuality, he said that because it was a very serious issue. So how do we overcome compromise? The first thing we have to do is we have to put our trust in God. Never falter for our trust in God, no matter what goes on in our life, no matter what trials. I think about this. I pray every day, I thank God for the blessings we have in this country. We are in the top 1% of the world in economic power. I've never had to go without food. I mean, some of the brethren around the world, they just go through horrendous times that, they're living in, and they're persecuted. We might be persecuted, I've lost a couple jobs, but I go get another job. It's not real persecution, but some of our brethren, and if you think about it, pray for them, because they are today going through major persecution. So number one, getting back to this, the 3 points, I have 3 points. The first one is trusting God. In Psalm 31, 14 and 15, Psalm 31, 14 and 15, we read, "But as for me, I trust in you, O Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and those who persecute me." And we can all relate to this. And we really, in this day and age, we need to really buckle up the bootstraps and really get close to God, because we know Satan is roaring. He's a lion, and he's going to devour whoever he can. And we see it in the falling away of the church. I don't really understand it, how someone could go to church for 20 years, keep the Sabbath day, and then all of a sudden they're free, they're set free from this bondage. I mean, I could, for 20 years of Saturdays, I'd much rather be going to the beach or doing things. I just can't wrap my head around it. But that's not to say, with this human nature, that I may not compromise. We have to be on our toes. The second thing we have to do is we have to have faith. We have to strengthen our faith each and every day. Matthew 21:22 states, Matthew 21:22, "And whatever things you ask in prayer, believing, you will receive." Now, of course, we know this is not stating whatever we ask for ourselves. I want a new Ferrari, so God's going to bless me because I'm a good Christian, I'm a good boy. This is once we follow him and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and we obey his commands. And then also Luke 1:37 reads, "For with God nothing is impossible." As long as we have faith, no matter what the outlook is, we don't have to compromise. We don't have to use an excuse, well, this happened or that happened, so I fell onto this compromising situation. We're smart enough, most of us that have God's Holy Spirit that are baptized, we know when we're compromising. Or even if we don't, we should. And when we start to compromise, we need to really stop it right dead in its track, because compromise leads to sin, sin leads to death, lawlessness. And then the third thing is it getting back to this point of obedience. James 1:22 through 25. "But be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man observing his natural face in the mirror. For he observes himself, goes away, and immediately forget what kind of man he was. But he who looks into the perfect law of liberty and continues in it, and is not a forgetful hearer but a doer of the work, this is the one that will be blessed in what he does." So again, the 3 things we have to do in order to keep from letting compromise creep into our lives, on top of praying, fasting, Bible study, and so forth. We have to trust in God, we have to have faith in God, and we have to have obedience.